Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paytech Show. On today's episode, we're going to be exploring the partnership between Bottomline Technologies and Knowit. Knowit are an organisation that is revolutionising the way that banking is carried out over in the Nordics. So we sent FF News' Tim Goodfellow to Bergen, Norway to speak with Rolf Kleppestø and Espen Vindegg. Joining us here in the FF studio is Lisa Farmer from Bottomline, an organisation famed for improving financial messaging, especially when it comes to cross-border payments and the huge changes in the payments industry. Well, without further ado, let's hear from our guests.
I think if banks are trying to, stay competitive, service, their all important customers, ensure that they're deploying relevant services, then key things we hear are things like cash positioning, mitigating fraud risk, and also looking at the ability to connect to new payment rails, instant payments being a real important one. We at Bottomline conducted our business payments barometer, and we found that corporates again find that cash flow reigns at the top of their hit list, reigns supreme for all corporates of all sizes. And however, that same business payments barometer also shows the real-time adoption of payments globally is ranked as their number one key driver across businesses. And finally, I'd also like to mention that corporates are aligned with the banks around priority around that they place on mitigating fraud and reducing risk.
One of the challenges you have is that at least in the Nordics, most banks have the same core systems. And if you have some good idea for a new product, then it becomes a long process to actually put it into the marketplace. Also, just the cost of operating these infrastructures is a fairly substantial cost to the bank. And that means that you're spending a lot of your resources just maintaining status quo. Regulations are changing and also government laws are changing. And that means that you're constantly working to keep your systems legal. And then there's the cyber crime dimension to it, which is, it's a race and you need to stay on top of it. So in short, keeping and maintaining an old infrastructure is becoming a business problem, even though it's not a business issue.
So we at Bottomline believe that that winning combination, if we want to call it that, is using hosted services, single, secure, SaaS-based platforms to connect, compete, and comply. Firstly, that instills confidence in the bank, but also instills confidence in the bank's customers as well. Soon, we're hearing more and we see more on emerging payments, new payment rails, instant payment schemes, but with that comes more regulation. Additionally, single hosted platforms allow our customers to not only process transactions but also audit, to report, and helps with regulatory requirements.
So why did Bottomline decide to partner with Knowit?
Partnering with Knowit was seen as important to Bottomline. We feel that we have very complementary solutions. Culturally, we feel that it's a nice partnership and a good partnership for Bottomline. And our expertise and our ability to reach wider geographies is important.
So we've been involved in some of the major efforts that have been made with banks here in Norway, trying to build cloud-based banks. 22 was the first year you could legally do this, and we were part of some of the a couple of big transformation efforts which we found, or the clients found, the risk and cost were just too huge. And that kind of plays back into the composable dimension, where you don't need to do everything at once, and you don't need a single big migration and a big launch. You can do piece by piece and switch out parts of the solutions and parts of the infrastructure part by part. And that makes it easier, very much less risky, and you avoid some of the risks toward the license to operate, like breaking customer data, some of those things. So that's a major trend we're seeing right now.
We try to orient ourselves towards what's happening out there, what other smart people do, and we see if we can incorporate that into what we deliver. So yeah, and what we also see is that many of the banks in Norway and in the Nordics, they have really old core legacy systems. Many of these were built during the 70s. They were built using COBOL programming languages, and many of the people who built these systems, they are now retiring. So for the banks, it's operational risk having these systems. So when we have been around talking about composable banking, when we're talking about software as a service, API first, all of these things, we see that this is a message that more and more banks are kind of paying attention to and getting interested about.
We're still exploring the opportunities with Knowit, specifically which products we could go to market together. The key one we see is connectivity, how we could help Knowit clients in the Nordic region reach the UK market, for example. Another example of complementary solutions where we can work together is Knowit's loan application service plus Bottomline payments could be a really powerful combination.
And you just mentioned the Nordic region then. Is that the core region that you as a partnership are focused on at present?
It is very much so. Bottomline have a spotlight at the moment on the Nordic region, not a region we have historically worked in very often. And we feel by partnering with Knowit, a key partner in that region, we can could certainly support Bottomline's growth in that area.
So if we look back, the payment networks in the Nordics all come out of older approaches where the banks typically would collaborate and there would be a common payment system for all of the country. And as time has moved, the companies have been bought and sold. Now we find that in the Nordic markets, there are single players who control most of the payment rails. And that is one of the hurdles still to be solved, or we're working on it. And that basically means that if you are a customer of one of the big monoliths, then in many ways you have a lock-in effect, because if you want to change parts of your solution, perhaps a banking core, then you may fear that your other parts that this company provides will not be prioritized maybe, or your costs may go up. And payments is one of these areas. There are 3 players moving in the Nordics now building parallel systems, and we are looking to those to kind of unlock some of the functionality that would make composable much easier in the Nordics. We're lucky to be from the Nordics, where we can do more to APIs, and we've learned how to do this. And now we see how Europe is moving really fast. We like to think we're far ahead in the Nordics, but we know it's not true. And we see how these solutions and how we can contribute to scaling this in a European scale. And it's very interesting to see how fast things are moving and how good they're going to be.
What strategies can financial institutions adopt to improve the efficiency and security of their payments platform?
Strategies we believe financial institutions can employ, particularly in one area, is having bank agnostic, network agnostic connectivity options, rather than managing multiple gateways within the bank or the NBFI. Bottomline are able to provide those different connectivity points from a single source For example, being able to provide connectivity to SWIFT, local clearing, and also domestic services from a single channel.
And just as a final question, how do you see the banks and FI payments landscape evolving in the next 2 to 5 years?
I believe that the banks and payments should be looking at different areas. For example, maybe focusing in on particular sectors, things like retail, healthcare, media. There's huge platforms out there that those sectors are using to process and manage their businesses today. Why not adopt and wrap payments around those platforms to provide complementary services?
That's all we've got time for in today's episode of the Fintech Show. I want to say a massive thank you to you, our viewers. You can catch the rest of the series and so much more over at ffnews.com, of course YouTube, but especially LinkedIn, where you'll see me in the comments. Thank you very much, and goodbye.